Hi, and welcome back to the HSP Connection with me, Robbie Lee.
And me, Philippa Robinson. This is where we share our stories, insights, and strategies to help fellow highly sensitive people navigate their own path to living a fulfilling and meaningful life.
Yes, we're on a mission to reclaim the word sensitive and help the world see the strength in sensitivity. Philippa, this is where I usually ask what we're talking about today, but also there's somebody else in the room with us. So who are we talking with today?
There is, you're right. Three's, well, no, three's definitely not a crowd. Three is absolutely perfect for today. And we have with us today return guest to the podcast, because we just can't get enough of conversations. Yes. And today we have Trude Sletteland with us again. Trude, hi.
Yay.
Hi, I'm so glad to be with you again. I'm really, really thrilled.
We're absolutely thrilled to have you back with us. And you know, Robbie and I are often like, we don't like to sort of impinge on your time too much, but we're always like, oh, what can we have Trude to talk? You know, what can we talk to Trude about next? But this one came round sort of not by accident, but very intentionally, because you were listening to the I think you listened to the catch up, this what we called Circle Back, where Robbie and I talked again about how it was for Robbie to share her health story. And then on the back of that, you went to listen to the original one where Robbie shared that. And halfway through, I think you stopped and emailed us and said, oh my goodness, I am listening to it. And this is such an important conversation that I need to email you and tell you how important this is before I go back and listen to it. So we said, please come and talk to us about the importance of difficult conversations. So here you are. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Absolutely. I mean, yes, I really, really wept through that podcast. It was so important. It really caught me. Yeah. So I'm really glad to be here with you. I missed you so much.
Oh, we've missed you so much.
Yeah, we used to spend quite a bit of time together every week, didn't we, when we were all doing the same course together. So yeah, so it's wonderful to have this opportunity, even though we're going to talk about difficult conversations, because all three of us appreciate the importance of having those difficult conversations. I mean, in part, really, that's sort of what we're trying to do on the podcast generally, isn't it, Robbie? Talk about things that maybe don't get said very often, but also what you shared with us about some of the difficult conversations you've had. It's so important to share this, that, you know, and thank you for agreeing to come and do it. And do you want to kind of tell us what that is? What led you to say to us about the importance of having difficult conversations? Because I suspect you've had a lot of difficult conversations over the years, but you were referring to something in particular when you said that to us.
Absolutely. I mean, but there's so much. I don't know what to begin.
I know.
It's a problem with me, really.
It's not a problem. It's not a problem. It's one of the delights of you.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, to begin with, I mean, when I hear a really important conversation, I always cry. And that tells me always that this is so important. And I can't get enough of those conversations. And, you know, so when I heard that one, I really had to get back way before I'd finished it. I just had to get it off my chest, because, wow, it's such a sort of like release when you hear important things that are not said very often, because it's painful, and it's and one of the reasons it's so painful is that it's kept quiet. We don't talk about it. So we keep it to ourselves, and it becomes, you know, a great big wound somehow. But what I mean, the minute we actually talk about it and we realize that this is so human, and what else do we want to be? I mean, we just want to be human, don't we? Yeah. And so I don't know if what you were referring to was actually my experience of late, that when I lost my dad.
That is what I was referring to, yeah.
Yeah, because that really has been the strangest experience in a way, because it's been so, painful, hard work, but so incredibly rewarding. And it's like when he eventually passed, to me it was like, I'm such a better person for it. I've learned so much. I think I probably grasped it somehow, but I hadn't felt it before. So it's like I've internalized some experiences that I would never, ever have achieved unless I went through this process. And so it is important. And I think maybe I'd start with the first really difficult conversation I had. It's a bit sort of revealing. So it's not easy to talk about, of course. It never is. Yeah. It's not meant to be. But my parents lived in a massive, great big house, and they tended to sort of invite the entire family, all my siblings and my kids and so on. And so we tend to be quite a lot of people there. And this was in a time when my dad was in hospital. I think perhaps, well, no, he wasn't. He was at home, but he was very sick. So they didn't want to invite everybody. So they were thinking of only inviting my kids. And so they uninvited me and my husband.
Oh.
And then it turned out that everybody else were there. And to me, it's like I was the only one who wasn't invited, or we were. And that was very painful. I felt really hurt. And I can't let that kind of thing just go. And so I texted my mum, I think, and told her that was painful. I didn't like that at all. So I just told her of my emotions. And she, rather than actually doing anything about it, she told my dad. And he was the one who was really, really ill, And my sister got really annoyed with me and sent me an email saying that what if this is the last conversation that the last thing you're hearing of him, that you've said these hurtful words? That was not very good. That's not very wise of you. And I've been thinking since that if my last experience with them was that I was excluded, that would have been so much worse. Yes. It would have been equally bad. He wasn't going to leave then anyway. So to me it was really yucky at the time. And then my dad phoned the following day. And we just wept together. Oh. And that was the first time ever that he told me he loved me. Oh. That's not the kind of words we've ever used. And he said so many sort of like wonderful things. And it's like, and I said, I had to tell you, I can't just sort of keep it in. I just had to say. And he said, of course you did. And we completely understood each other. And after that, we could talk about anything, absolutely anything, which was amazing. I've always been really open, so I've always sort of talked about anything anyway. But it's like I haven't felt that they responded that well. It's like, okay, I was allowed to say whatever I felt like saying. But then he opened up completely to me, which was really healing at times. Whilst he was waiting for the ambulance at one point, took forever. I just, lay down next to him and talked about how are you feeling right now, what's going on right now. And he was like, we're just healing ourselves, aren't we? don't need doctors. And so it's like he really sort of trusted me in being in those, you know, difficult circumstances. And I followed him to the hospital because my mum was tired. You know, she'd been had a lot on her. So I followed it. I came with him. And so I got an opportunity to become much, much closer. And, you know, at one point in the living room, we'd had all these conversations. And he said, well, did I tell you about my near-death experience? And I was like, no. Are you sort of, what's going on? What's going on? And he's like, and I don't even believe in these things, he said. And he just told us a little bit about it. And I was like, okay, that is fascinating that you can actually talk about these things, because he has never been a particularly religious person, but quite spiritual. I mean, he loved music and so on. So he's had some things that he hasn't, well, he never shared really, but he started really being open about anything, talk about anything. And so when he was really, you know, on his deathbed almost, really terrified and, you know, going through those really scary, horrid feelings, I could say, can you now just tell me more about that near-death experience? And he'd go, yes, of course. And he went straight into that. And I got him from a very difficult place and into this open, you know, thing, exploring the actual fear. And it's like, wow. I mean, it really, to me, it was, I didn't have to fear going into that because we actually practiced doing it and we were really open to each other's thoughts. And at one point he said, I'm actually starting to believe in your way, which is like, what? What is that? What have I said? And I'm sort of like open to anything. I think, you know, I think I've lived lots of lives, and I think probably I was a bird in my previous life because I can't eat, you know, and so lots of things. I just say that kind of thing, and it sounds a bit silly, but you know, it means I'm open to anything, but I don't know anything, so I can make things up if they feel right. And so I've just sort of like said that I don't think I can actually die because I think I am not this body. I think I've said now, I am love. That is something that's, you know, that's common to all of us. We share that. And when my body dies, I'm going to be really fed up with it anyway. Then there are things about me that can't die. And I've felt that since I was a kid. And I've been sort of like just saying this, you know. And my dad said, then before he died, said, I think I'm beginning to believe more in your way.
Wow.
And so we became really close at the end, and really being able to talk about absolutely anything, which meant, I mean, that talk about that near-death experience was actually moving into death, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Being able to talk about death meant that it's not quite so scary.
Yeah.
And what a gift you gave him.
Yeah.
I know, actually. And it was simply because, for a start, I dared. But it's not that I dare, it's that I can't not, because that would be so much more painful. And when I am able to do something, I need to do it because it's going to help the both of us. And it really, really did. And I think it helped my mum as well, because she felt that that he was, I mean, I could do things that she couldn't. She had to be his wife, right? And that's a completely different thing. So she had had to be with him. Whereas when I was there, I could talk about these really difficult things. So it's just really amazing.
A gift to both of you, really. And you're really reminding me as I'm transfixed listening to you, of the conversation we had before about courage. And you were saying that courage is doing the things you don't dare to do. And you just said then that you had to do it, even though you didn't really dare to. So, that courage that comes from you being love, really, enabled you to start that conversation off with him by owning your feelings. Starting that openness with him by owning your feelings about being left out of that gathering, which open. Who would have known that by doing that, you would have opened this door to, all this beautiful relationship for you to explore even more, before he died. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah. Yes, because I could never have come this close to death without actually dying myself in any other way. I mean, understanding what it's like to be there, because I had to follow him in his thoughts and fears. I could see his anxiety. I could see his sadness. I could see the loss that he was going. So I could tell what was going on in a way, and I would ask him, and he would talk about it. And so, and then I can feel into. I can completely understand that fear. When you think about it, it's really understandable, but we don't think about it because we're afraid of it.
Yeah.
And so we never talk about it because it's so painful. But once you're there, you have to sort of live with it. And it's made me understand more what life is about. And also fear. Because it's like, I would have so loved to take that fear away from him. But look, fear is a part of life, and this is exactly what we're afraid of. And so we just have to accept that this is actually really frightening. It's the thing we fear the most. It's like not being in it here anymore. But but we are. He's still here, right? I can feel him sometimes, I recognize him in his garden and in the shoes I'm wearing, because I got them for Christmas from him, and and of course he's still here, but and in my memory. And the thing is, when he died, he became much younger. I remember him as a 17-year-old really fit man.
I'm sure he would love to be remembered as a 17-year-old fit man. Actually,
70, not 17.
70. Oh, sorry. Well, 70-year-old.
He was really young as a 70-year-old.
Yes.
Yeah. Trude, as you're talking, like it highlights to me the gift of our high sensitivity, because of the way you're able to see and process and feel. You were really able to meet your dad where he was, and where he was sometimes in this fear, and he was facing death, and he was going through this, for humans, the scariest thing, and you didn't leave him alone there out of going, I don't know what to do, which is what I think a lot of people face in these situations. You're like, you met him where he was, you could feel him. And it all started, like Philippa said, with you being able to just express what was true for you. It's like that laid the foundation, and he met you where you were. And then the whole, you were able to meet each other. It's just so beautiful. I don't have all the words, but it's just a beautiful thing that you're explaining.
Yeah, because that is exactly it. We meet. We bond over a difficult topic. It's so difficult that if we can share that, then we are actually sharing the most for lack of other words, intimate thing, really. I mean, it's really, really close. It's really, it's on a higher spiritual level almost that we, And
because it's easy to have fun and it's easier to have fun and a nice time together, isn't it? But I think it's harder and more intimate, as you said, to be with somebody, with each other in those hard times.
Yes. Yeah. I think definitely. But to me, it was just much closer. And I think really that's what I missed growing up. Because we've probably talked about that before. HSPs don't really feel seen properly because people can't really see that inner strength that we have, that inner sort of understanding that we might have. It's like it is invisible. So I was always seen for certain things. I mean, of course, my parents were, really proud of my English, like that, this kind of thing. And being, my high spirits in a way, that was applauded and so on. But they never saw that. My ability to really get in and understand deeply, that's never been seen before by anybody, I don't think. And it's always your parents. You want to sort of know this about you. And that's when he understood. And so I would never have been seen like that had it not been for my dad actually dying.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's really strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you saw him in a way that he hadn't been seen before either.
Absolutely. Yeah. No doubt. And so, so in his funeral, I actually sang and held a speech for him. And I mean, I can't really sing in that kind of circumstance because I normally cry, and you can't sing and cry at the same time. But I actually sang an Ave Maria that I'd never sung before. It was like, oh, that sounds nice. I can probably do that. I mean, but it really worked. I mean, it was really, really lovely. And so, everything about it was amazing. I sing in the Bergen Philharmonic Choir. Ed Gardner, our conductor, the Philharmonic's chief conductor, just finished his tenure, and he said about the Bergen Philharmonic Choir that it's the world's best symphonic choir. I just had to say. Yeah. But anyway, mentioning it in passing, but anyway.
I hope everybody who's listening got that. Yeah.
But we sang in the Greek Hall 2 days before my dad. We sang the Brahms Requiem, Mass of, Requiem is a Mass for the dead, and 2 days after the funeral, I went to Oslo to receive an award for our record of Delia's Mass of Life.
Wow.
That's symbolic, isn't it?
Isn't it just?
Yeah. So it was a really, really strange time for me, this was. And another thing was that my niece Ella, who was just 5 at that time, well, she was 5 just after, they bought a trampoline and got it in my parents' garden on the day that my dad died. So on the next day when my dad had died, we just had to go and jump on the trampoline. And 4 ladies, or 1 little girl and 4 grown girls were jumping on that trampoline. And it's slightly, you get electric. I don't know the first thing about this, but our hair just went straight up, and that was just like my dad's hair. He had the most crazy hair that just stood straight up, thin and really, and we just got granddad hair.
Oh.
So it's like, we were in and out of, grief and being jolly, and it's really, and I think my dad would have loved that. Yeah. And, in the funeral, what I felt was that my dad would have been really proud. So it's like, he's been with us so much. It's like, I really felt his presence when I did sing. I think I just felt that he was proud. So it was possible for me to sing. And the speech, completely possible because he was a really great speaker.
Well, he was there, like, I don't know, holding you up or however one wants to sort of describe, but his energy was there with you on that day.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. So this was a bit of a jumble, wasn't it? But I mean, all these emotions are, they're a bit all over the place and also centered in a strange way.
What you said something almost right at the beginning when you started talking about doing what feels right.
Yeah.
And it feels like that has been your guide through all of this, be it saying how you felt about being left out, be it jumping on the trampoline, that be it talking to him about the near-death experience when you knew he was frightened about actually dying. It feels like you have not overthought it, but you felt into what feels right and just done that, and that has been what has opened things out to be what they have been for you and for him.
Yeah. I find it so much easier to just follow my gut because because then I'm doing right by my gut.
Yes.
If I'm following my brain, I'm doing right by somebody else or some book that I've read, and maybe not another book that's also written but not the same, So my I don't trust my head as much as I follow my gut. I trust my gut.
Yeah. In true HSP style, with a great connection, listening to your gut, and I suppose having the courage to follow it, because it's not easy. Even though you feel like this is what you must do, you still have to have that courage to do it.
Yes. Oh, thank you for saying that, because that's what that's really it. It's because my dad trusted me and my gut. Because a lot of people wouldn't. I don't think my mum would have trusted me in the same way as my dad did. Yeah. So it's really a gift to me. It's like, because he trusted me so much, I could actually follow my gut without being worried about anything, because he would agree. He would feel into the same sort of thing. And it just worked amazingly. And so it's not just my gut. I think him as well. He was really sensitive towards the end. I think even he called himself highly sensitive at one point. I don't know if he's always been that, but if you're really ill, then you become more sensitive, and he certainly became a lot more sensitive to emotions, to spirituality, to connection. He became much more open, because he's been really a very intellectual person, very academic, and so he was very mind oriented. But in that, he really followed me into the whatever's going on out there, all the other places.
Which, as you said, made you feel very seen.
Yes. Yeah, right in there. my gut was actually seen. My emotions, my inner something or other. It's like, yeah, you really, really saw me.
And it valued you
Yes.
as well. Yeah.
And so, yeah, and that's because we dared to talk about the difficult things. And that, Robbie, might just be why I felt so into your talk about, what you'd been through, because it's the sort of thing that we don't talk about. But once you talk about it, I mean, it becomes so much easier.
Yeah.
So natural. So, I mean, of course it feels like that. I mean, we're human. We have to feel the pain of that kind of thing. And if you're not being met in the right way, then somebody listen. You have to meet us in the right way, And so when we talk about it, we can make people understand that this is. I mean, just because we say it, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Actually, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah.
Hi. If you're enjoying listening to this podcast, have you thought about joining our HSP Connection community for more connection with other HSPs? Because really, us HSPs thrive in the community of others.
Absolutely. And Philippa and I have created this space on an online platform where we can connect with each other deeply. We're going to have these awesome conversations, and we would love to get to know you over there in that space.
We would. So if you're interested and want to join straight away, there's a link in the show notes. And if you'd like to have a chat with either of us beforehand, please reach out. Now, back to the episode.
When you just now said somebody listen, I was just like, oh yeah, I felt that in my gut, because it's like, yes, so many times I have felt that way. And what's been a gift to me in sharing my story, the sharing of it was a gift to sit with Philippa, who was just so wonderful in helping me in holding that space and allowing me to tell it. But then it's been a gift to hear from so many people. And it's like, yes, this is why we do need to talk about the hard things, because we're not the only ones experiencing them. It's part of the human experience. And sharing them helps us connect and helps us not feel so alone in it,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's really what I felt listening to your conversation. And yes, the two of you together, it was so warm and so held and so safe.
Yes.
And that's what we need. If it's safe, if it really feels safe, you can open up and say anything, right? And then we get everything on the table and we can look at it and see, oh, of course. Of course it's like this. Yeah.
And it sounds like that's what you did for your dad. You created that safe place for him.
Yeah, yeah. And also, yes, a lot of the time, I mean, if he talked about, I think I'm going crazy, and I'd ask what's going on, why do you think you're going crazy? I mean, and then he'd say, and I said, well, that's completely normal. I mean, if you experience that, of course. I mean, that is crazy. That is really, really frightening. And you just feel normal again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why we need to talk.
Totally agree. Yes.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who think they're crazy are not crazy.
No.
Yeah, they're having a very reasonable response to whatever's going on for them or has gone on for them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And we could just understand each other, listen and understand, then there is no such thing as crazy, really.
No, and you had a wonderful experience at having these conversations and being seen and understood by your dad. And not all of us who have not been seen by our parents are going to get that opportunity. So, so like my parents have both died, and then, they never saw me at all. But there isn't, we can still get the feeling of being heard and seen by sharing with other people we feel safe with and who are going to hear us and see us and understand, which is really, you know, part of this, you know, encouragement in a way that we are talking about here, about having difficult conversations. Because I think, Robbie, you said you haven't really told that. Well, yeah, I know you said you haven't told that story out loud as you did until we had that conversation.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and I held on to a lot of shame about my own story, which is, I think, what happens, right? We experience something, and as we hold on to it and don't share, that's where the shame grows there in the dark, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. But being able to say it out loud and being able to say it in a place that was safe, in a place where I was held and wasn't made to feel weird, right? It was just like, oh yeah, of course. And met with love when I was met with love, you know, it changes everything. Just changes everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, what really is the use of shame? And who should be ashamed in, you know, I mean, it's your doctors who should be ashamed, not you.
Yeah.
And so if shame keeps us from talking, that is just so sad. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we just have to encourage everybody to talk about anything in the right place. Just make sure you are trusted and believed.
Yeah.
And if you're not trusted and believed, then perhaps that wasn't the right person to share it with. And no shame on it being the wrong person, but don't let that put you off carrying on looking for the right person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I mean, the people who don't understand just don't understand. It's not that they're bad people, and it's not that they don't want to know you. It's just because they don't actually have the equipment to understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And how you're feeling. And you just have to find, the support that you need in other people that actually will understand. And I mean, we're proof that there are such people.
Exactly.
100%.
Yeah. And I mean, we talked about it on a previous episode, didn't we, Robbie, about meeting? Well, it was about, we were encouraging listeners to meet themselves where they're at. So, you know, what we're talking about here is, if you want to share, find somebody who can meet you where you're at. And often I don't think you know whether that person can meet you until you give it a try. And sometimes you're pleasantly surprised, and sometimes you're like, okay, they're not getting that. And I think, you know, I'm pretty sure I've shared before that when my mum died, a friend of mine asked me, oh, how are you? And I just said, well, to be honest, the main thing I'm feeling is anger. And they had no idea what to do with that. They were just like, oh, okay, and couldn't change the subject quick enough. And I get it. I get that they didn't understand why I was perhaps feeling angry rather than just sharing how sad I was. And I learned that they're not a person to go to with my deep feelings, and are not going to get me where I'm at, wherever that is. So, you know, I perhaps haven't shared such deep stuff with them since, and that's fine. That's just a reflection of where they're at and where I'm at. You know, it's not that one of us is better or worse than the other. It's just what it is. And, you know, I have other people who I can share those things with now because I've practiced it. And I think that's what you said as well. Practice having these difficult conversations, because the more you practice them, the more we find the people we can have them, the more we can experience the release and the acceptance and the being seen and being understood, the more we have these difficult conversations.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's so rewarding if you get to listen to people's stories. It's such a gift, and you get to you know, to see things from different perspectives. and you see yourself from a different perspective, and you feel into other people. I mean, to me, it's just such a gift. It's really, really rewarding. And so that's why I want to be a coach, actually, because you get these conversations that are really, really deep and vulnerable, and I just love it. And so I know, I mean, being HSP, I think I'm quite normal in that respect. And so a lot of HSPs who have opened up and do understand and trust their guts and trust their, their right to be that way, can open up for such conversations. And so that I think that is one of our gifts to the world, that we can actually do this.
I completely agree. Yeah. And as we've been talking, it's making me think, the more that I wonder if this is another thing that we can kind of lead the way on in the world, that we can create these spaces to have these conversations that people are yearning to have, but maybe aren't equipped with. I think it's another thing we can help the world with. And it starts with us being able to share and create spaces, which is exactly what we're talking about. And Philippa, I wanted to comment on what you just said too, about when you were sharing like your anger and the person like didn't know what to do with it. I think an important part of that story too is that you didn't then just bottle all that up and go, okay, well, there's something wrong with me because the person that you just shared it with didn't know what to do with it. Like, you have continued on your own process of feeling that. And, I mean, you wrote a book where some of that might be in there. But I mean, like, you've continued on your journey and you kept saying what was true for you, and you found the people who could meet you where you are. I think what happens to a lot of people is that vulnerability is so scary, and they try to say it and they're met with someone who can't take it in. And then they just internalize there's something wrong with me then, instead of being able to say, oh, that wasn't the right person. I'm going to keep looking. And so I'm giving voice to that for our listeners, who maybe have been like, well, I can recognize what Philippa is talking about. And I know I experienced that as well, where I've tried to share things, wasn't met with it, and I internalized that. And I just want to keep encouraging people. There are people who can meet you where you are, like Trude said, there's 3 of us sitting right here. Like, there are people who can meet you where you are. Find those people. Don't just bottle your stuff up, because what you have to say is important. What you are feeling is real and important. Your story is important. It's like, you matter. Just comes back around to that always for me, You matter.
Yeah. And I would also like to add, there's nothing wrong with you. There's never anything wrong with anybody. You are where you are at the moment. This is what you have. This is what you are. And of course, you can always get better. That's the part of our journey. I mean, we're not finished with the journey until, we die. So we just have to accept that we're never perfect.
Yes.
And I have to say, I think it's really great that we're all using the word die and death here today, because I feel that shying, well, definitely I would say in the UK, because we're all in different places, different countries. I definitely think in the UK we tend to shy away, or we don't always use die and death. And I think that is part of the distancing ourselves from it and not wanting to use words that are difficult, because actually, if we use those difficult words, the person we are talking with might be upset, and we not them, we are uncomfortable. I'm not saying us 3 here, but I'm saying we generally are uncomfortable with other people's displays of emotion. So we try and sort of gloss over it a little bit. And on purpose, we didn't talk about it before we started recording, but we've all used the word die and death. And I think that's quite important. I know there's probably people listening to this who are disagreeing with me, but I think where that's coming from, so I'm being quite vulnerable really saying this, I think it's quite important to own those words, and those words are meaningful to me, and they're obviously meaningful to you guys because you've been using them as well. And that just shows our ability, I'm not quite sure that's the right word, to go to those difficult places.
Yeah, because I think I haven't sort of been conscious about using it, but I think I have, because my dad wasn't afraid of passing.
Yes.
That wasn't his thing. He didn't know what was going to happen afterwards. But I mean, he asked me at one point, what's going to happen now? And I don't know. But he was afraid of dying.
Yes.
He was afraid of death. He wasn't afraid of passing. He wasn't afraid of, So that's exactly. I mean, I met him in his fears, not in the gloss over things.
Yes.
And that is exactly what made it easier for me and for him. So I think you're right, Philippa. The words are important. But we do have lots of words that gloss over them, which I find really, really puzzling, because I never know which gloss over words to use. So I'm just pretty direct.
Yeah, well, I noticed that I started saying passing away more because I felt it was more, people were using it more than death, say. And then I kind of felt like I was distanced from what we were actually talking about. And I've kind of gone back, because at my age, a lot of parents are dying. Both my parents have died. And I've got a lot of friends who have got elderly parents. And it's a conversation that comes up not infrequently anymore. And I've had to make a decision, I feel, of where I stand on that. Not that I'm, of course I'm going to feel into what feels right with each person. And if they aren't using those words, then I am not going to, be using them anyway. Those are the words I'm going to use. And, I don't care about how you feel. Of course I do. But I think that also might be a way of entering into these deeper conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, am I making sense?
Absolutely, because it's like speaking the truth of what is, and it's like it's almost like a signal, and it's a signal that you're able to have that conversation. You're able to be with the truth of what it is.
Yeah. Should anybody want to go there is an invitation, because I am absolutely with you to go there should you want to.
Exactly.
Yeah. Gosh, it's interesting, isn't it? And it's so important, like you said, Trude, because I think you also talked, and we've talked a little bit about this already, you also said in your email, I think you said it, that it's really important for HSPs to have conversations about what they've experienced, like you said, about not being seen or heard, and other things about our experiences, because we tend to, on the whole, not feel understood, not feel seen, not feel heard. Then we have these wounds.
Yeah.
And in order to heal those wounds, we really need to be able to have these conversations, to have deep, meaningful conversations where we can be vulnerable and we can talk about our experience and our experiences and what we are experiencing right now, or in the here and now. And by having those conversations, we can start to heal those wounds. So they are very important.
Absolutely. I maybe shouldn't say that right now because it's another story. But my dad's funeral was, I've always hated funerals. Really, really hated them, because from I was little, I always heard that now, they're going to Jesus, because all the Christian people are going to Jesus and the others are not. They also said that the others are not, and that was my parents. My parents were never religious, so I always heard that my parents are not going to heaven, and so nor am I. Of course, I don't want to go where my parents aren't going. And so I always hated church funerals. And for some reason, my dad had a church funeral. But I made a speech about this. I said this. I told that story. And so I talked to the vicar beforehand and said, I've got the speech that is a really critique towards, church and so on. I don't. It might not be. Well, it is. Yes, it is. I said, well, why don't you read it? And I read the speech, and having finished it, he just said, when I'd finished it, he said, "Wow." It's like, oh, that was acceptance. So I think actually. Yeah, so I held that speech and telling everybody there about my feelings in church, really hating that sort of separation, which I felt it was all about. And my speech was all about love, of course, but and afterwards I got lots of hugs and people saying, "Oh, soulmate, I love you for saying that." I was like, wow. So to me, church is suddenly a place I don't mind going because I was allowed to say that there. So another, I've had so many really, really strong, important experiences during this, this journey. It's really amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
Well, I mean, the courage to say that in that place.
Yeah.
And to bring love into that place and speak the truth of your experience and then to have the vicar have the reaction he had, and then all the people coming up to you. So it's like, it was obviously a really needed conversation.
Yeah, it is. This is something people never say. And I couldn't have gone to that funeral if I didn't say that, because I couldn't send my dad to, I don't know, I couldn't do that. So I just had to say it. And having said it, I just felt, I got the right to go to church now with my feelings, my emotions, and I can believe whatever I want to believe, which is love, which is really what it ought to be about anyway. And so a lot of people just, felt exactly the same thing. Now, I mean, this is, this is the place to go for love.
Beautiful.
Very beautiful. Very. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And I mean, we're talking here, about really big conversations, aren't we? And we also said that we need to practice, really, because I think sometimes what we need is something big to happen that forces us to have those big conversations. But if we want to be more intentional about it, we could find other things to practice on. And I'm just wondering, before we wrap up, if we've got any advice for any listeners about how to practice difficult conversations. I'm kind of putting you both on the spot a little bit, and me, all three of us on the spot a little bit, but I just wondered if we could offer any advice, given how important we say it is.
Yeah, I've got something really, really important, I think, on my mind, is that we just open up for other people. We let other people talk. We let other people come to us with the important stories. Because because then that's the other way around, isn't it? If we show that it's okay to talk about it, then it becomes more easy for people to talk if they know that it's all right. And so when we've opened up for it, it's actually easier to talk back, I
love that.
I just do.
Yeah. So perhaps if we sense, because as HSPs, we're gonna feel into these things. But so if we sense that maybe there's more to something than when somebody's saying something to us and we think there might be more to this, or even if we don't sense it, but we wonder, we could ask, maybe. So can you tell me more about that? Or I'd love to know more about that. Or how were you feeling about that? Or do you think that's a good way of starting?
Yeah, don't shy away from the difficult questions.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then also, in their responses, it's something that we've alluded to already in this episode, but like our ability to say things like, oh, yeah, that's totally normal given what you were going through, that helps people to go, oh, okay, yeah, because I just said this really hard thing and they're not looking at me like I have 3 eyes or something. Our continuing loving presence in the midst of what they're saying to us, I think helps continue the vulnerability.
Yeah. Really great. And I think what's coming up for me is not be put off if we're not getting the response that we want or need. I think for me, when I started opening up much more, when I discovered Brené Brown and the power of vulnerability, and I decided, right, okay, I've tried the closed up way of living. I need to try something different. And I thought, right, okay, Brené Brown says try vulnerability, so I'm going to go for it. When I started to be a bit more honest about life, how it had been, how it was, how I was feeling, I found that some of the people who could meet me in that were not the people I would have thought could have done. So I think, you kind of have got to put aside certainly all expectations and perhaps, all judgment, and just try it. Just try and say something and see. So if somebody says, how you doing? I mean, this is sort of a small example. How you doing? And say, well, things are not so great at the minute. And then somebody might just say, oh, okay, do you want to tell me more about that? Or I'm sorry, or what's going on for you? Or other people will go, okay, well, anyway, this is going on for me. And you go, okay, this is not going to happen right now. I mean, it doesn't mean that person might not be in a different position or place another time, but just ease yourself in gently and don't assume who is going to be able to meet you and who isn't.
That's good.
I think those are 3 quite good tips to start off with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking we might start to wrap this up. I just don't want to wrap it up if any. I think I've said everything I want to say. Trude, is there anything that you have on your heart that still needs to be said?
I don't think so. I think actually I managed to say almost everything.
Good. Almost everything.
Well, I don't know. I don't make me think.
Don't make you think and feel into anything else. We'll save that for the next time you're here.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you. And Robbie, is there anything left for you?
No. Nothing other than I'm really grateful we had this conversation about having difficult conversations. It felt like it was a heart conversation for me. Like it was, yeah. And Trude, I've missed you. It's been really lovely to be with you today. Thank you. And Philippa, it's always a joy. So thank you both so much.
Yeah, what a great conversation. Okay, so I think that's it for today, everyone. Remember, there is great strength in your sensitivity.
Yeah, and the world really needs you to be who you are. Yes. And so for now, it's bye from me.
It's bye from me. And
that is bye from me. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to HSP Connection. If you've enjoyed listening, we'd love you to hit the follow or subscribe button, as this helps other people find us. And it also means you won't miss an episode.
Also, we'd really appreciate it if you could rate the podcast and share it with anyone you think might be interested. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can also leave us a review.
To get in touch with us, you can email us at hspconnectionpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you with your thoughts and comments on the episodes, as well as suggestions for future topics and guests.
We are both HSP coaches and speakers. And to find out more about Robbie, go to robbielee.com.
And to find out more about Philippa, go to boldhsp.com. See you next time.